Welcome to For the Stands, your college football by fans for fans. I'm Bo Gorham, obviously starting it up here. Got two great guys with me here. We got JJ, we got Dick. We're gonna have some solid conversation here. See a little recap of Week 7, guys. Why don't you introduce yourselves and then we'll jump right in. JJ.
Yep. I'm JJ Apostolico. I'm from Nazareth, Pennsylvania, which is just outside of Philadelphia for all my state college friends. Looking forward to a very, very fun week of college football this week.
Dick, what you got?
Dick Slapperman, Texas A&M. Okay, that's how we do it, right? That's how the professionals do it.
That's how the pros do it. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, that's it.
Let's get
That's
going.
it.
All right, yeah, let's jump right in. Week 6 was pretty wild. There's some big takeaways here. Let's start out with you, Dick. What you got is your big takeaway from Week 6?
That LSU might be for real and Georgia may not be. I don't think any of us saw that coming, that the Gamecocks beat something other than themselves this week and found a way to upset who we all thought was the assumed number 2 in the SEC, who may have had a chance to dethrone Alabama, assuming, of course, they didn't have a fourth-string quarterback to step in and win it for him this year.
Hey, man. Don't ever count us out.
Who?
Yeah.
Who would count you guys out?
Yeah, exactly. Oh, yeah, that Nick Saban guy is really looking for a signature win at this point in his career.
Yeah, he's just, I don't see it happening.
Look, every time you put in a fourth-string quarterback to win a big game like that, you just gotta, you gotta know that Saban's doing something right.
Well, Jalen's gone, so they can't.
It's Tua's brother.
Tua's
isn't it?
little brother?
Yeah, Tualia. Look, Tualia, here we go. In the SEC championship game, we're putting him in. I believe.
Yeah. How about you, JJ?
So this is the one that we might have already known as the ACC is dog shit. It is just terrible.
That's putting it politely.
It is, though. I mean, you had two teams that you thought might be, decent, at least maybe top 25 teams in Wake Forest and Virginia, and then Wake Forest goes out and gets absolutely shredded by Louisville, who was supposed to be in the basement of the conference, but they put up 55 against Wake Forest. And then you have Virginia, who loses to Miami on the road on a Friday night. They lose by 8. Their offense couldn't get anything going against a defense that let up 42 to Virginia Tech, who lost by 30 against Duke, who lost to Pitt, who lost to Virginia. So there's your circle of suck. In the ACC. They're just, it's bad. It's really, really bad. You really, outside, you could take Clemson and Georgia Tech out of it, and you could pretty much go 2-13, and it's a coin flip. Who wins?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think that some teams may be a little bit more talented than they're playing. I think Miami has a lot of talent. I just don't think that they have the right coaching staff in place yet. I mean, it's first year for him?
Yeah.
But
it's first year for Louisville and Georgia Tech too.
Doesn't mean that they're good teams.
Right. I'm not saying they're good teams by any means. I just think they have some talent, that they have the availability.
Yeah, and I think there's only one team that might be top 25 outside of Clemson. It might be Pitt. Maybe Duke is on the fringe there too. But outside of that, there's all those other teams. They're firmly outside the top 25 for me.
I mean, and that's taking some assumptions here. So we have to assume that UCF was the same power they were the last 2 years in order to give Pitt kind of that win that would get them into the top 25. And really the most shocking thing for me is that Mac Brown's first year back, we thought was good Mac Brown. It's bad ACC more than anything else.
It's really bad ACC.
It's really bad ACC.
Well, here's my other thing. Yeah. I wonder if Clemson is going to suffer for that. I wonder if it's going to lower their kind of killer mentality, because they haven't really had any sort of competition in the ACC at all.
We can get to that later.
Okay.
Yeah. I was gonna say that's a teaser. That's what we call that in the business.
Okay. Yeah. There is a segment later that we're going to be talking pretty heavily about Clemson, so we'll leave that on the table. But yeah, JJ, what were you going to say?
I think the ACC as a whole. I mean, you take Clemson out of the conference. Are they any better? I think they're worse than the American, and you could argue that Mountain West is too far behind. Like they're right now as a football conference, they have fallen behind the Pac-12, which no one would have thought going into the season, and they have fallen behind the American, in my opinion, as well. And they're coming close to falling behind the Mountain West as well. They're not a good football conference right now in the slightest.
I agree completely. All right, well, we'll go ahead and take this opportunity to let all you guys watching us know that we've got a couple of different forms of social media you can follow us on. We've got Facebook, we've got a Twitter, we've got a Twitch, I believe, and we've got a YouTube channel, obviously.
MySpace is still in the works.
Yep, we're still working on the MySpace. AIM Messenger, maybe a thing later. I'm not sure.
We're gonna bring it back for everybody.
Just for our fans, really.
Yeah, just for our fans.
But no, so go out there, get in there, follow us, interact with us, give us your hot takes, give us our shit takes. I don't know, give us something. But anyway, let's go ahead and move
That sounds
on.
like I was gonna say. We'll give you hot takes. You give us shit takes. That sounds like some merchandise material right there.
Yeah.
Let's get that on a shirt.
Look, I'm still pushing for that calendar merch that I've been talking about for a couple weeks.
You've been pushing for it. So
one of these days, we're gonna get all of these losers, half naked, taking some photos. It'll be great.
Brings up memories of how I paid back my student loans. Okay.
Hey, we all had to put in a little extra work there. So let's go ahead and jump into the noon time slot. We got a couple of really solid games here. Shot here is going to be the Florida South Carolina game. Dick, why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about this one, since you're an SEC guy.
I mean, the obvious thing here is going to be that you have kind of a high on upset, which is really the most powerful drug there is. South Carolina, who just somehow overthrew Georgia. You have Florida coming off a loss to LSU, who granted is a lot tougher team than we all thought they would be, but they still played very competitively. Kyle Trask is looking very, very, very good, and Dan Mullen is looking more and more like he's the guy, that it wasn't just a lot of people were saying it was kind of a hype train when he came out of Mississippi State. That's looking more and more like it is not the case. Honestly, I think Florida's going to play angry. I think South Carolina might be a little bit in over their heads. I mean, they have a target on their back now for Florida. They're looking for a punching bag, and I mean, Gamecock's probably looking pretty good right now.
Yeah.
No homo.
Yeah. JJ, you got anything to add?
Yeah, I think this is going to be kind of an interesting game to see if South Carolina is actually, a better team than we gave them credit for coming into the year. I mean, they obviously didn't play well the first few weeks of the season. They got beat by North Carolina. They got trounced by Missouri. They hung in with Alabama for a little bit before Alabama kind of pulled away at the end. But that game against Georgia, I do think that South Carolina definitely caught some breaks in that game. They definitely, wouldn't say that they're the better team still, but I mean, you go in on Georgia's home turf and you beat them. That's tough to say that they weren't. They were definitely the better team that day, but they definitely, Georgia beat themselves more than South Carolina beat Georgia.
Sure.
I think.
Yeah, I agree.
I think we kind of saw that Georgia's not quite as good as we saw, but as we thought. But I also think that they made some mistakes that they haven't made in previous weeks. Now we'll get to see this week if it was because South Carolina was forcing those mistakes, because Florida's going to be another test, and I think South Carolina gets them at home. We'll get to see if this is going to be one of those situations where kind of close to home. Is this a Penn State situation where you pull off that big upset like Penn State did over Ohio State, and you kind of ride that the rest of the year and develop into a good team, or do you kind of just you had your chaos, this was your win for the year, and you kind of slip back? I'm going to probably say it's the latter, just because it's. I think we're overreacting a little bit. Will Muschamp is still South Carolina's head coach, and not. I still don't think he's a very good head coach. And I don't see him out coaching Dan Mullen. I don't see it happening.
And I mean, the reason Penn State obviously comes to mind is because you're a Penn State fan.
Yeah.
But I can't name any examples from my own memory where a team upset another and then turned out that they were legitimate. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Typically when you see this, it's because it's a trap game, flash in the pan, dead cat bounce.
Yeah.
It's not because that team is a legit threat.
Yep.
So
And that's what I think this is here. I think South Carolina is still a 6-7 win team. I think they caught the lucky breaks and they took advantage of it. Like, to give them all the credit in the world, they took advantage of every break that they got. But Georgia definitely gave them a lot of chances.
Yeah, well, and I think a lot of it too is I think Fromm is not the most careful with the ball when he's throwing.
He's not.
I mean, it was 3 interceptions, and one of them was a pick six. I mean, those were big momentum shifts for South Carolina in that game.
Yeah.
And I mean, Trask is looking okay, and he's only thrown 1 interception. So if he's safe with the ball, then
one thing to note is that those 3 interceptions did all come from the same guy, which is kind of interesting to know. I know Fromm has had some turnover-prone issues, but it could have been from forcing it to Pickens, maybe, because
maybe
they had their top corner on him and he had 3 picks.
Right. Well, and I'm wondering if Florida will have the same sort of issues. If they try and force it to who's it going to be? I think it's going to be Jefferson.
Van Jefferson.
So, I mean, if we see another couple of picks, maybe it turns into more of a ball game. But I think that Florida's probably got the edge too.
I think Florida just needs South Carolina is it's gonna be rocking there for sure after the game that they had last week. They're gonna probably have a hot start. I think Florida just needs to weather the storm, and then they'll be able to finish them off.
Yeah. Well, and to look at the O lines too, South Carolina's O line didn't allow Georgia a single sack. 3 tackles for loss.
Florida's D line has been great this year too. I think. I mean, we all talked about Auburn's D line going into that game, and it turned out to be Florida's D line that really did the damage. So that'll be an interesting matchup for sure.
I think so too.
Okay.
All right. Well, I think we've exhausted that one, so let's go ahead and Chaser.
One hell of a shot. Yeah.
Yeah, no kidding. That one's coming back up. Why don't we look at the Chaser here? Iowa State and Texas Tech. That's at Texas Tech on FS1. So, JJ, since I gave the first one to Dick, why don't you take this one?
Yeah, I think this is going to be a really, really good game. I think both these teams, it's going to be interesting to see if they've actually turned a corner or not. Both these teams really struggled to start the year. Iowa State's were very well documented. They were ranked in the preseason for the first time ever, and they struggled against Northern Iowa. They get beat by Iowa and El Assico, and then they lose to a now undefeated Baylor. So it doesn't look as bad of a loss. But since then, they drubbed TCU and West Virginia. TCU was my pick to finish 3rd in the Big 12 too. So not that I think TCU is actually that good this year, but they put it on them. And then Texas Tech, they beat Oklahoma State after everyone was buzzing about how well they played against Texas. They beat them at home, and then they nearly went to Baylor and beat Baylor, and arguably probably should have beaten Baylor. So it's going to be interesting to see if these two teams, if one of these teams has actually turned a corner, if they both have, or if really neither of them have. But I think it's going to be a good game. Then I would give the edge to Iowa State just because I think they're starting to live up to the preseason hype a little bit now that the hype has dissipated.
Yeah.
I mean, from my end, I'm going to get this kind of qualifier out of the way early. I think it's going to be a competitive game. I don't know that it's necessarily going to be a good game. There's kind of a delineation there. We're going to see some mistakes. I think it is going to be a fun game. We're going to see some mistakes. We're going to see some penalties. I'm personally giving the edge a little bit to Texas Tech. They really impressed me last week. They've been kind of thrown into the grinder lately. They've been playing against some of the Big 12 toughest teams out there. I mean, they haven't held their own completely in all of them, but against Baylor, they certainly did. I mean, I don't want to seem like that was like a national championship level performance from them, because there were obviously times where they're in the red zone, they failed to convert. And because of that, they ended up losing the game. But they showed some real flashes of success there. Yeah. I mean, I'd be shocked if they kind of regressed this week. They've been making a lot of progress under Matt Wells. And, growing up in Texas for the majority of my life, kind of the identity I've seen Texas Tech having is even in their bad years, they're going to play you close. They're one of those teams that seems to have a mean personality. And I think that's going to kind of rear its head a little bit more here against Iowa State after that big loss against Baylor.
Yeah. I definitely probably agree. I think in this game I'm maybe giving Texas Tech the edge just a little bit because it's at Texas Tech. And I think
Yeah.
as well, Dick, that they're going to have kind of that killer mentality coming in. They scrappy team. And I think that Iowa State's kind of a one-trick pony. I think that Brock Purdy is kind of
Yes.
the guy there doing everything. He's running the ball, he's throwing the ball, he's got it all. But until he's got some
Yeah.
weapons around him
Yeah.
that are really
Well,
strong, I don't necessarily see.
And
we'll see. We'll see if they might have gotten a breakthrough performance from their true freshman running back Brees Hall last week. He put up 130 yards, 3 touchdowns. I know it's against West Virginia, but
Right.
he put up a solid performance. He was supposed to be a breakout candidate to replace David Montgomery, who left in the draft. That would help a lot if he can take some of the load off of Purdy's legs, so that he can focus on throwing the ball and not that Purdy's not going to continue to run, but he can take some less hits. He can be a little more conservative, and he might be able to, continue to grow the offense. I think Iowa State, and a lot of people got turned off by him early. I think they are going to be right back to where they were last year, which is 8-4, 9-3 type team. I think a win this week kind of will show that.
And JJ, I think you told me this pre-show that Brock Purdy is leading the Big 12 in passing yards. Did I hear
He
that
is.
correctly?
He is,
Yeah.
yeah.
And he's also leading his own team in rushing yards right now.
Right.
So that's why
Yeah.
it's important. That's why it's important that they get someone like a Brees Hall, or I think their other running back, a Taylor Lang, to step up and really take over the load running the football, because he can't do it all year.
One of my things, JJ, about that, what concerns me about that is he's now kind of in a mindset, though, of I need to pull the ball down and run unless this play pans out within a certain time frame. And even if you've got somebody who's going to be running the ball for you, unless you're running an RPO, you're kind of stuck in this situation where, all right, I'm still thinking of pulling down the ball to run, even though,
you're right.
even though I'm not, maybe I've got some freedom there to hold the ball a little bit longer. So
And that's another, again, just another reason why, if they can establish the run game and he can start to focus more, thinking I'm going to look through my reads, through my progressions, and not worry about maybe we should run the ball here.
Mm-hmm.
I think that'll help, and I think they're going to continue. I know Texas Tech's defense has looked better the past couple weeks. They slowed Oklahoma State down for a little bit. They held Baylor's offense isn't great though, so it's not like holding them to 20 in the 20s is like special. Baylor's really been winning games with their defense, so I still think Texas Tech's defense. I think people are kind of still underselling just how bad it is. I think we will see Iowa State take advantage of it.
Okay. Yeah, I think we've exhausted that one too.
Yes.
Solid. So we got JJ with Iowa State, Texas Tech with Dick and myself. So we'll see how it goes. Anyways, let's move on to the next segment, which I think is a new one here. We've got what's called Either, Neither, or Both. And here what we're going to do is I'm going to throw out a couple of different statements, and JJ and Dick are going to have to decide whether either one of these teams it's going to happen, neither of these teams is going to happen, or both of the teams is going to happen. So let's go ahead and get things off. I know it sounds confusing, but you'll catch on pretty quick. First statement is, makes the CFP either Wisconsin and LSU, either of them, or both, or neither. What you got?
I'm going to start right out of the gate
Yeah.
here. Honestly, I think if it's going to be either one of them, it's going to be LSU. When you look at it, LSU's path to the CFP goes through Alabama, just like Wisconsin's goes through Ohio State and Columbus.
Yeah.
The only issue is LSU doesn't have to play those guys from Tuscaloosa twice. Wisconsin, to have a realistic chance of going to the college football playoffs, is going to have to beat Ohio State twice. Once in the regular season, not next week, but the week after, if I'm not mistaken. And then more than likely once again in the Big Ten championship.
Right.
Whereas LSU, on the other hand, I mean, really, if they just win out, I don't see how any contender from the East is going to be able to scare me enough to take them over LSU. Just what we've seen so far has been too dominant. Joe Burrow he's going to be, forget tank for Tua. NFL teams are going to be looking at Joe Burrow as kind of that second or third quarterback taken overall. He's looking like a stud. That LSU offense is for real. I mean, I've just been thoroughly impressed by them. With Wisconsin, I'm waiting for them to kind of break through. I had this joke up until last year that Wisconsin was like the Raptors in the NBA,
Yeah.
but for the NCAA.
Yeah.
They would always go
They're always
just
right
until
there.
they just got to beat that one team, and then
And
they
that
would
one
break
team-
through.
And that one team was Ohio State again.
Yeah,
Exactly.
That's a pretty tall ask.
So just to kind of take it from there, I'm going to say LSU makes it and Wisconsin does not, and I'm going to say LSU makes it because they beat Alabama.
Really?
I think that their offense takes advantage of Alabama's injury defense. Alabama definitely they have some true freshmen that are starting on defense that it's shown through. Texas A&M put up more points against Alabama than they did against Clemson than they did against Auburn. And you see in other teams
Damn
put
right.
up points. Alabama's scoring points. They're scoring a lot of points, but LSU can score a lot of points too. And I think LSU's defense is just a little bit better than Alabama's defense, and I think they win that. My kind of part to this is I don't think LSU gets in if they don't beat Alabama. I just think there's too many other teams that are going to be in it or going to be one-loss conference champions or I think Clemson goes undefeated. I think Oklahoma goes undefeated. So if Alabama goes undefeated, that only leaves a spot. And right now it looks like either Wisconsin or Ohio State. I'm thinking Ohio State will get into the college football playoff this year.
Well, but that's an interesting ask because if they split, say Whiskey wins in the postseason and Ohio State wins regular season, what happens if it's now 3 one-loss teams that are competing? I mean, do you throw in a Whiskey?
I would give the edge to Wisconsin there, just because I know that they say it's supposed to be if they're equal or and everything else, but I have a hard time believing that. I understand when it's a 2-loss conference champion, but when you have a team that will almost run the gauntlet in the Big Ten, 9-game conference schedule, and they go 11-1, they beat Ohio State either at Ohio
But I guess
State
we
or
also have to think, okay, what are the big wins there, you know?
Well, their big wins
Ohio State twice.
Ohio State's a big one. And Ohio
Yeah.
State, I know you can't really do the transitive property, but at that point, Ohio State would have beaten Michigan, they would have beaten Penn State, they would have beaten Michigan, they would have beaten prospects. And now Wisconsin also has Minnesota to put on their resume, Iowa to put on their. I think that in that situation, Wisconsin would get in. I still think Ohio State beats Wisconsin. I think Ohio State is better, and I think that they're just faster. I know.
I mean, I agree with
a
you
little
there.
faster, but
if I'm looking at an Ohio State-Wisconsin game, I'm giving the edge to Ohio State pretty much across the board. But I think it would be interesting to see because if you look at like a one-loss LSU, with their one loss being to Alabama, LSU's had an opportunity to beat Florida. LSU, depending on how close the game is with Alabama, I mean, it could, everybody makes a joke about a quality loss, but I mean,
no, you're right. It would be a very interesting discussion. I think conferences would riot if it happened, and I think that the committee would keep that in the back of their mind.
Well, but it's happened before. I mean, you saw Alabama get in as a one-loss non-conference champion.
One loss,
which
2-loss though.
I was
gonna
say
big difference.
And this is gonna bring
the
me
one
to
loss. The one loss was by 30 to Iowa. That's a big difference.
That's true.
This brings me to kind of a thought that I had, and this might be veering a little bit too off course, but if LSU loses against Alabama and Auburn wins the Iron Bowl,
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, I was gonna say. I mean,
it becomes a mess. Actually, that situation, I don't know exactly how they would sort it out. That could actually come down to a coin flip. That's how close they would end up.
Yeah, well, because how would it go? Alabama's lost to Auburn.
Well,
in that situation,
I
think LSU would probably get the benefit of the doubt just because of how they've looked so far.
Well, yeah, but I'm saying who would go to the conference championship game? I think you break down the tiebreakers. I think when all three are 11-1 and they've only lost to each other, I'm pretty sure that goes all the way down to it's either like strength of record, which is like, I mean, that's shaky. Like even like that's
Well, but
shaky
I
to
think
have to
LSU's
decide
got the
between
edge
two.
in that too.
Well, they would, but like, do you not like? Would you not bitch and complain about that? That's the reason they got in is because they had.
Yeah,
I
but
mean,
here's
we're
my
gonna
thing: if
bitch
that's the
about
rule, then
anything,
that's the
really.
rule.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But
I mean, like my thing is like if
there
that's the
is
rule, that's the rule.
there is an option. Although the very last option is really a coin toss. Like you could or could not win the SEC based on a coin toss.
Well, but
Like-
then if that does happen, then you look
Friday
and you
Night
say,
Lights.
all right, who's going to the CFP on top of that now?
Yeah, that's tough.
Well,
because
it's
now
whoever
you've
would
got
go to represent the West, and then the West would win, and I
maybe
think that
over
problem
a
kind of
one-loss
solves itself.
Florida,
Yeah.
maybe not.
Well, Alabama would still probably get in that scenario if we're being totally honest with ourselves.
Maybe.
Anyways,
I don't know.
I don't want to dig ourselves into the rabbit hole any
so
further.
going to kind of building off that,
we should
we can
probably
go
move.
we can go to our next. We can go to our next segment. We were talking about Auburn.
Oh well, yeah. So the next question, not the next segment, because we're still in the neither or both.
Yeah, we still
But
got we got to move here.
Yeah, we got to move on. We've been talking. We went down the rabbit hole right there.
It's
so the
easy to
next
go down the
one
rabbit
is
hole with
when's
college
the
football.
big
bad.
rivalry game? Auburn or Michigan? So now we can
Auburn.
talk about Iron Bowl.
Or is it
All
neither?
Auburn.
Or is it? I know Michigan's not going to, but
Right,
is it
I don't think-
neither? I think this is really an Auburn or neither question.
Right, I agree.
I like
So
to think
I
I'm an
know I just-
optimist, but
So I know I just said that LSU was going to beat Alabama.
Yep.
Kind of want to double down and say Auburn will too.
You're kidding me, right? Have you
mostly
seen?
mostly because it's at Auburn.
oh, child, no.
Dude,
I'm not.
if that does come to
I think-
pass, I will be eating my shorts at that
I
point.
think I'm telling. Alabama's defense really concerns me.
But I think that our offense.
I don't think Auburn has the offense to take advantage of it. I don't think
I-
Auburn has the offense to take advantage of it. I think it'll be very close, but I think Alabama. So I'm going to say neither.
Here's my thing. I haven't had an opportunity to talk about Alabama really, like how they've been playing in any of the shows that I've been in. So I'm going to go on a little bit of a spiel here.
I can see
Okay.
some
Not a long one.
sweat start to just.
Honestly, yeah, there's a little bit of sweat. I've been concerned about the LSU game for a while, and now you're telling me Auburn's going to beat Alabama. All right, now we got to stop this. All right. Alabama has probably the best wide receiver core in the nation right now.
Yes,
I don't
they
think anybody can say anything about that.
Not even
and
close.
we have probably the top 5 wide receivers in the nation. Because if you look at how Ruggs is playing, Waddle's playing, Judy's playing, every single one of those guys, we have two guys in this season who are up for the most touchdowns in a season in Alabama history. Like it,
Their
they
offense
were
is
tied.
Their offense is legit. It is beyond legit.
I just don't think. And see, my biggest concern is it was funny because my biggest concern with Texas A&M after Texas A&M put together an 8-minute drive for the first one was that we were going to score in a minute and our defense was going to be back out there and gassed. And I thought we were going to beat ourselves because we were going to gas our own defense, which I still think can happen. But one of the things that I did see after that drive was I saw that our linebackers made some adjustments. I saw that our coaches were able to make some adjustments on some of our schemes. And I think that ultimately, like in those games, in the LSU game, I think first is it's going to come down to who's going to make the key stops. I don't think that either team's really going to be stopped on offense, but I think that there are going to be key stops that need to be made. And I think that both teams are going to be able to, but it's going to come down to who does at that point. And we'll be able to talk about it after the game. But for the Auburn game, I don't think that Auburn's defense is good enough to stop the offense. And I think that our offense is able to get some key stops against a young Joe Burrow. Or not Joe Burrow, sorry. Bo Nix, a young Bo Nix. Bo Nix has shown that he can be a little shaky. Bo Nix has shown that there are some things that he still has to work on mechanically. I do not think Auburn will beat us.
Like I said, I agree. I was close to doing it. I'm not going to do it. I'm saying that they won't do it.
Sorry.
But I'm just saying Alabama's this is not a typical Alabama defense. They're going to be in. They haven't really. I mean, Texas A&M's their closest test, and I think their biggest tests are still to come. I think they're going to be in a couple close games down the stretch because their defense is going to let them down.
Yeah,
well, I had to loosen my collar because of all the fire that was coming off.
All right,
there was some heat.
I needed an opportunity to really talk about Alabama's performance so far because Alabama really hadn't shown much up until this point.
Yeah,
I think they definitely dropped one of Auburn or LSU. I don't think they drop both because I don't think this is going to sound stupid. I don't think Nick Saban at this point in his career is a 2-loss guy. I think that point is sooner rather than later.
Probably
I wouldn't
true.
say I wouldn't say it's just because I think the offense is talented. I'm just saying that this is not a typical Nick Saban defense, and I'm just kind of intrigued to see how it plays
There's not
out.
a lot of leadership. I think that the big concern
It's young. It's very young.
very young. When we lost Dylan Moses before the season started, I was
That hurt.
immediately concerned. I mean, that was because Dylan Moses was gonna be the guy. He was gonna be the leader on the defense.
And that's where I'm saying that absence probably hasn't even been felt yet. It will be felt against.
I mean, it definitely has, because I think that Dylan Moses is in the game against A&M, and A&M doesn't score as many points as they do.
Oh no, I
don't think,
like in terms of like actually making you sweat in a game.
Yeah, that's true.
It hasn't been felt yet. It will be felt.
I don't know. See, one thing I do think is our DBs are really good, and
we do need to talk about Michigan at some point during this.
No, Michigan. I don't think we really need to.
No, we don't.
Michigan's not beating Ohio State. I don't think there's any way.
Kind of a paradox here, because we are talking about Michigan and saying that we don't need to talk about Michigan. Ryan Day. I mean, I don't know if it's kind of the same thing that I had with UCF's coach, Josh Heupel. I don't know if it's him driving a bus that Urban Meyer started, or that he's really as good a coach as we thought he was through the first couple games of last season. I'm leaning more toward the latter than the former, but I don't think Jim Harbaugh at this point pulls off the upset finally. I mean, it might happen, and if it does, I do think Jim Harbaugh is the coach of Michigan until the universe collapses in on itself. I just don't see that happening this year.
I'd be gobsmacked. I don't think Michigan has the guns.
I'm not even gonna I've shit on Michigan enough, and I'll shit on them again later. But it's not happening this year.
Let's go ahead and hit the next statement. Next statement is makes a New Year's Six bowl, and this is Baylor and Minnesota. You think either of them are going, or neither, or what do we think?
I'm going neither again here. I think both teams are a little overrated.
I think I'm gonna agree with you.
Minnesota and Baylor have yet to face their toughest competition yet. Baylor's got Oklahoma State, Oklahoma, and Texas left. Minnesota's got Penn State, Iowa, Wisconsin left. Both teams will lose at least 2 of those games, and especially Minnesota. Minnesota doesn't have much of a chance because they're going to be 4th at best on the depth chart in terms of getting to a New Year's Six.
Right.
That wouldn't get them there. Baylor at best, their best chance is to beat Texas and get to the Big 12 championship game to be guaranteed to go to the Sugar Bowl if Oklahoma goes to the playoff. I don't think that happens though either, so I'm going neither.
I was going to say both with an asterisk. I do think that Baylor is at this point, I would say, is a lock for the Sugar Bowl. I do think Minnesota is out back. I do. I really do. Just looking at that game last year, Baylor only lost, I think it was like 2 points. They've been getting closer and closer every year under Matt Rule. I don't think this is a game that they drop this
lock
time.
Is a heavy statement there.
I feel that confident in this Baylor team right now.
That must mean you're locking Oklahoma in the playoff then as well. Because that means they would have to beat Oklahoma in the Big 12 championship game.
No, Baylor can beat Texas and lose Big 12 championship game, right? And still go to the Sugar Bowl.
If Oklahoma goes to the playoff.
Right.
Yeah.
If Oklahoma doesn't go to the playoff, then Oklahoma goes to the Sugar Bowl.
Okay, well, if we're living in your dimension where Auburn and LSU both beat Alabama, then sure, I guess Oklahoma.
I'm saying Auburn doesn't beat Alabama.
Okay.
I want that on the record. Unless it happens, then I am on the record.
It wasn't that long ago that Oklahoma went before. I don't think it's out of the question if they'd go again. If that's the implication of Baylor beating Texas, then I guess I've signed on to that take by proxy. But I do think Minnesota is prime Outback Bowl potential, which is not a New Year's Six bowl, but is played on New Year's Eve. So I do think that they play
a little bit of a.
I was gonna say they.
I am getting a little fact check here. It looks like Texas was playing without Ellinger for most of the game last year against Baylor.
Yeah, but didn't I was going to say, didn't Texas have a lot of just missed opportunities in that game, if I'm not mistaken?
Yeah, but you put Ellinger in there and maybe they convert some of those. I don't know.
Yeah.
Let's move on.
Yep.
We don't need to play in what if. Yeah, is a starting quarterback next season? Sorry, Jarrett Garantano at Tennessee or Felipe Franks at Florida. And I think this is going to be a resounding neither. But let's hear it.
It's neither. Garantino's not getting his job back. They got a true freshman who's playing well. He might get some snaps if they decide to redshirt the quarterback they have now because they want to save him.
I don't think so because I think that Pruitt's got to feel a little heat right now.
Yeah, I think they're going to play. I think he's the guy going forward, and I don't know if Franks is going to get his job back from Trask either. So I think neither for sure.
I for one am looking forward heartily to when Felipe Franks puts on a jersey again and takes his role as the starting quarterback of the Dallas Renegades in the XFL. I'm joking. But I think Felipe Franks is going to start somewhere in college.
Just not Florida.
Next year. It may not be Florida. He might transfer somewhere and kind of do what we've seen Buechele do at SMU. And I don't know that he's going to have that level of success, but I do think that he does still have a lot of football left in him. And I do think that whether it's in the NFL or elsewhere, because we do have more alternative leads popping up, I think he is going to be a name that we see going forward for a while. I mean, who knows? He could be like a Gardner Minshew type where starting quarterback gets hurt week 1 and he immediately gets put in there. I don't think we've seen the last of him. I just don't think we're going to see him starting at Florida again.
Yeah. If anything, he does have quite the franchise name, Felipe Franks. Anything with alliteration sounds great. All right, so the next statement is going to be scores 13 points this week. Either Tennessee's offense or Wisconsin's defense. What do we got? Either, neither, both.
I'm going to be consistent. I'm saying Tennessee's offense scores 13 or more points because I don't believe in Alabama's defense. They've let up points to other teams that also don't have good offenses. I will say Tennessee. I don't think.
I'll say if Tennessee does it, it's garbage time.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
But I'm saying it's definitely more likely than Wisconsin's defense just because I know Illinois is not good, but 2 defensive touchdowns in a game that doesn't happen very often.
Yeah, I've got to agree. I have to believe that Tennessee, no matter how bad the score is able to string together 13 points in some way. Honestly, I think it's going to be both. Wisconsin, I think, is going to continue to have powerful showing, but it's hard for me to believe that third Saturday in October, Tennessee is not going to be able to put up some points.
You guys are grossly underestimating how much we hate that pumpkin orange. Anyway, does it. What you got?
Oh, no, I was going to say there are not many teams that Nick Saban just relishes raking the scores up on. Tennessee is one of them.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. So that's going to wrap it up for either, neither, or both. Let's go ahead and jump in. We are a little bit behind on time here.
Let's go ahead and let's
we took a little while for that one. Yes, 3:30 we've got for the shot, Temple at SMU. Temple coming off a big upset there. Well, upset, I say. It may not have been an upset, but a big win in Michigan, with Memphis, sorry. And so what do we got?
JJ, you want to kick it off?
I'll take it. Yeah. I think this is one of the best games on the card in terms of how competitive it'll be. I think Temple kind of showed that loss they had to Buffalo earlier in the season. It was kind of a fluke. It was coming off a big win over Maryland. It was kind of like an emotional win. They go on the road for the second straight week in a row, and they get trounced by a mediocre MAC team. It's not excusable, but it's understandable in the spot why it would happen. Since then, they've been great. I mean, they've consistently played great defense, and they will continue. I think they'll not continue to do so against SMU, but they'll give SMU more problems than any other defense that they've faced. They forced Memphis into 4 turnovers last week, which if they can force Buechele into even 2 turnovers, it's going to cause SMU some issues on offense that they aren't used to facing. I do like SMU to win here, but I like to.
I think SMU, living in Dallas my entire life pretty much, SMU wasn't really thought of as being like a football team in Texas, if that doesn't sound condescending at all. Exactly. Like we always heard about the Pony Express growing up, but It was you were either an A&M fan, a Texas fan, a Tech fan, Baylor fan, or TCU fan. SMU wasn't really anywhere on that list.
Yep.
They are. I mean, if they keep this up, they certainly will be. I don't want to say they are now, but they certainly look polished. They look put together. I've never seen SMU play like this. And I mentioned it before. I know a kid who's on the. I say kid. We're pretty much the same age. Who's on the SMU team now? And I mean, he couldn't be in more support of the quarterback change that they had in Shane Buechele, and he knows Nick Starkel fairly well, and said he was still excited for Shane coming on, even though Nick, was a good friend of his, and just loved the coaching change. He said that they were going to be doing some big things, and I believe him. Honestly, I think SMU is hot take coming in. They're going to usurp UCF as the power in the American. And I don't think that's just going to be this year. I think this is going to be next year as well, and maybe the year after that. I think SMU,
We'll have to see if they can replace Shane Buechele. Like, he's a big reason why they're. As long as they can replace him, I mean, they've got other pieces in place for sure.
I mean, we've learned from Oklahoma pretty recently. I mean,
you can get more. You can get transfers, yeah, for sure.
This isn't a model. I mean, I've talked about Felipe Franks earlier. Maybe he has a renaissance at SMU. I'm not saying that happens.
Maybe.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of those things, like, that's a model that can work. That is, of course, if they don't have someone that's redshirted because they have Shane Buechele. Yep, it's either Shane Buechele is the bridge to the solution, or he is the first part of that solution. You know what I mean?
Yep, for sure.
I seem to be having a little technical difficulty. There we go. All right, so let's go ahead and jump into the next one. We've got Baylor at Oklahoma State. What are we thinking, Dick? I think JJ started the last one. Why don't you take this one?
Well, Will's not here today, so I guess somebody has to root for the Cowboys in some respect. I hope Will's going to be happy. There's, I guess, a 10% chance they hand Baylor their first loss. I guess, it's higher than that.
Yeah,
it's higher than that. I said that, and then I just realized how much of a douche I sound like. But
I'm gonna root for them, but we're gonna go 10%.
Oklahoma State's going to play well. Is it in Stillwater?
It is in Stillwater.
Yes.
Yeah, I do think that this is going to be a competitive game. Baylor didn't look like they had their head right completely against Texas Tech. As much as I do like Texas Tech this year, I think they are a little bit more of a middling team that Baylor should have been a lot more competitive against. So go ahead and give me Oklahoma State on this. I think they're finally going to be caught off their game after what happened last week.
All right, JJ, you got anything to add?
Yeah, I think this is interesting. I mean, Oklahoma State's at home. They're favored here in this spot. So Baylor's still getting a little bit disrespected in that respect. And we have seen Spencer Sanders, true freshman quarterback. He's talented. He's going to do some good things at Oklahoma State, but he has struggled against some of the Big 12 defenses, including Texas, Kansas State, and Baylor is definitely up there in terms of their defense. If Baylor can force some turnovers, I think they win this game. I think that Spencer Sanders matures a little bit here, though, and helps them secure a win because, I think he's that talented that he starts to figure it out. And I think as a whole, Oklahoma State's roster is just a little bit better.
Yeah, I agree. All right, well, that wraps it up for the 3:30 time slot. So now we'll go into another new segment here. We're going to take a little time to talk about some Clemson stuff. This one's calling Rumblin, Bumblin, and Stumblin. Obviously, for the second time in 3 weeks, Clemson has fallen in the rankings from first to second and then is now sitting at third. So what I want to know is this indicative of a big change in the AP? Are we seeing people recognize this sort of preseason hype? Or is it just that Clemson hasn't really been getting these solid statement wins over these apparently nobodies in the ACC? Do we see them dropping again? I don't know. What's the play here? What do you guys think? I guess I threw the last one to Dick. So JJ, what do you got?
I think they do fall again after this week. And a lot of it, you're right. They have nobody to play against, and it's through really no. I mean, Texas A&M will be their biggest challenge of the year. And not to slight Texas A&M, but Texas A&M is most likely going to be a 7-5, 8-4 football team, somewhere in that range. So
okay, 8-4 I can live with. Yeah,
if one or the other is gonna be 7-5, and that's not like exactly like a great top team that you've played. So that's something that's definitely shining through, and it's also they haven't been their typical dominant Clemson South, at least what people come to expect. I can see them falling as far as 4, but I don't see them falling any farther than that. But I think this is kind of interesting. This is kind of like classic Clemson at this point. This is the new Clemsoning, or is that they start off really slow. They have struggles early in the season. You see the North Carolina game. You can kind of go back to 2017 when they lost to Syracuse at the Carrier Dome. They played North Carolina State tough, and then they went 4 or 5 straight games of winning by 24 to 30 points before losing to Alabama in the playoff. Then last year they have their close call against Syracuse. They play some tight games early on. They have their tight game against Texas A&M at Kyle Field, and then they start going on that run at the end of the year. They're beating teams by 50 points, like week in and week out. They just kind of hit their stride the second half of the season. It's kind of interesting to see if it's just the way that Dabo kind of plays his team as they just kind of build, or if this is just a different Clemson team.
So I've got something I'd like to add here. After that Clemson game in this year, week 2, if I'm not mistaken, a lot of my Aggie friends and coworkers and classmates came up to me and said, "Dick, what do we do? Do we put Jimbo on the hot seat? Do we throw this season away? Do we bench Kellen?" Just they were dumbfounded, speechless. This was supposed to be our year, so they thought. But I said, no, don't worry. This is all part of the plan. You see, Jimbo and Dabo have a rivalry that goes deeper than maroon and burnt orange.
Yep.
You see, Jimbo Fisher is intentionally tanking the Aggies to ruin Clemson's strength of schedule.
Ooh.
And it's genius. Because their victory against us turns into a loss. They could beat every team by 40. It matters not if their one signature victory is against an Aggie team that goes 3-9.
Jesus Christ.
It's diabolical, and I love it so much. And that, my friends, is why head coach Jimbo Fisher does not have a buyout. No, it's bottom has fallen out of the ACC. If it didn't already, LSU looks incredibly competitive. And I mean, what can we say about the Big Ten other than they look solid? They don't look as top heavy as the ACC is now, like they have in the last couple of years. Yeah. I mean, quality losses aside, I think who am I joking? We're going to see Clemson in the CFP. I think they're probably going to be the 2 seed once this is all said and done. I think that winner in the SEC is probably going to be the 1 seed, and then we're going to get that wild card at 4. But I don't know. I think. I mean, but like, they might fall as far as 4. Maybe Oklahoma jumps them at some point and they fall to 5. But realistically, they're going to make the playoff if they go undefeated, which they should. Like they're going to get that benefit of the doubt. If they get 1 loss, maybe not.
Well, and here's my thing. I don't necessarily know if I'm going to agree with your CFP slot there, Dick. If Ohio State wins out, I don't necessarily see.
2.
Yeah, I'd say
Ohio State wins out. They're number 2. I also don't see that happen. Just the fun fact for the Big Ten, since they went to the 9-game slate, even with some of the great teams or not great teams, some of the teams that have played in the Big Ten they've been very good. No one has finished undefeated in the 9-game slate since it was introduced. Probably doesn't happen still this year. I don't think.
Who beat some whiskey?
Let's play a really quick game. You got to play
a team like Wisconsin twice. There's a good chance. There's a good chance they split.
Let's play a really, really quick game and say because Clemson, in my mind, undefeated, reigning national champion, there's no way they miss the college football playoffs. But a 1-loss Clemson, that's up for debate. So let's play a game really quick.
1-loss Clemson?
1-loss Clemson. So if Clemson loses the ACC championship
or
game.
Say they lose to South Carolina.
Yeah.
Another
gonna
big
say.
upset from the Gamecocks. That would be madness. I don't think Clemson makes it at that point.
Well,
I don't think so either.
they lose the Palmetto Bowl, so you
Yep.
think they're out?
Yeah.
Well, as long as more chaos around them doesn't
I
happen.
think a one-loss Clemson doesn't make it, period.
No.
Really?
Clemson doesn't have an opportunity to lose.
If
There's no
if
definitive win that they
a
have.
one-loss conference champion still gets in over two-loss conference champion.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
What about a one-loss non-conference champion? An LSU that has one loss to Alabama.
Oh, okay. I see what you're saying. Well, that's
I'm not
different
going to say
because
I'm
they
not going
didn't
to say
lose the
it's
championship
automatic.
game.
I'm not going to say they automatically get knocked out. I'm saying
Yeah.
there's a good chance
I think
that
they
don't.
do,
But
because
it's not
I
an
think
automatic disqualification.
I think that when the CFP goes to decide, they look at those quality wins. And if you don't have anything on the resume, I mean, Clemson's only quote unquote quality win is going to be Texas A&M, just like Dick said. And if Texas A&M is a 7-5 team,
Yeah.
I don't think Clemson's got an opportunity here. They don't have a prop up there. There's nothing that you can point to and say, "Oh, well, look at this Clemson."
Well,
this is the Clemson you get in the CFP.
I argue against that. Sorry, you want to go really quick?
No,
JJ?
go ahead.
I was going to say really quick. My argument against that would be 2014 FSU. I mean, the ACC was equally dog shit then, but they just were so dominant in their conference. It was hard to ignore it. And
Well, they weren't even dominant though. They just went undefeated, and they were the defending national champ. There were a lot of people.
Exactly.
That's the reason why there were one-loss teams ahead of them, was because they weren't dominant.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, no, I'm thinking of the BCS Bowl under Jameis. Wasn't that 14?
Oh yeah, that was the year before when they went. Yes.
Yeah. So the ACC was terrible then, and they still got
but they
slated
beat up on them pretty good.
Yeah, and they still got slated for the BCS because they were so dominant. I think Clemson has the exact same thing. And if they drop a win, they have that leeway just because of the sheer number of points and how the team looks. Trevor Lawrence, right?
I think that with the CFP committee,
has to count for something.
They need to get to. They would need a two-loss Big Ten champion.
Yeah, they would. I agree. I think that with a two-loss team in the mix, then yeah. But even then, I don't know, man. You look at some of these, if you've got maybe a two-loss Florida that is coming off of beating Georgia and beating Auburn, maybe you're talking about them in a two-loss situation. I don't know. When you get into this sort of like, okay, Clemson drops a game.
There's a lot there. You really have to see how they play down the stretch.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. And I don't think Clemson drops a game. If Clemson drops a game, I'll be shocked.
I think I need a shot after that.
Yeah, no kidding. Give me a shot.
So let's go ahead and head to the next one. The next one is the 7:00 time slot. We've got as our shot the Tulane at Memphis game. That's on ESPN2. I think I threw the last one to JJ. So Dick, what you got?
Tulane's look pretty good. I mean, that team in New Orleans is looking very, very competitive. I think it's going to be a great game. There's a reason we have the shot in the 7 p.m. time slot. Certainly got my vote. I do think that Tulane is going to edge it out just because of what we've seen from Memphis so far. I do think Tulane is a little bit more real. But JJ, I'd love to hear your opinion on it.
This is interesting. I touched on this a couple weeks ago. Brought up how crazy the AAC was going to get before the UCF Cincinnati game. 2 weeks ago. Yeah,
I think so.
And we said essentially this is going to be, this could be an elimination game, the AAC West, and for Memphis, this is an elimination. If you lose this game, you now have 2 losses. You're looking up at potentially an undefeated in the West, and you're out. Like that's it. You don't get any more chances. So Memphis needs to win this game, and they're going to need to tighten up. I mentioned the ball over 4 times against Temple. Need to clean up the turnovers because Tulane will put up more than Temple can. Their offense is better. I don't think their defense is better, but their offense is certainly better. So if they turn the ball over, they're going to be.
Yeah, I agree. I think I'm gonna maybe give Memphis the edge just because it's at Memphis. But I don't necessarily. I think it's gonna be a really tight one, and it's gonna be anybody's game really. Moving on to the chaser here. We've got Michigan at Penn State. Now we've got a resident Penn State guy here, JJ, but I kind of want to see him stew a little bit because I know how mad he gets when he can't talk about things like those Pac-12 sections. So Dick, why don't you take this one too?
Well, you see, I don't really like what I've seen from Franklin so far against Penn State. The offense has been fairly impotent. Jim Harbaugh, I mean, I can't say enough. I've been a zealot of his all season long. I just can't evangelize this man enough. He's done such a great job. A quality loss of the season in my mind against Whiskey. I mean, he's revolutionizing the game. Top down, left, right, front to back. You say it, the man in khaki's got it.
Solid. All right. I guess we've got to let JJ talk. JJ, what's up?
I am so excited. I'm almost nervous about this game by how not nervous I am. Because I don't see a way Michigan wins this game. I really I've looked at this from a few different angles. I just don't see it happening. The win that we had last week against Iowa really cemented that we're a double-digit win team this year. To go into Kinnick, we should have won by more than one score because that bullshit touchdown got overturned. That was a touchdown. That was bullshit. I'm still mad about that.
Last week
but
was
it didn't
kind
matter.
of of those sort of calls, wasn't it?
Yeah, but it didn't matter. They were still completely in control from this. I know it was close at half. Second half, they were in complete control. And they've got a four-headed monster in the backfield. They've got Journey Brown, Ricky Slade, Noah Kane was the freshman who carried the ball 12 times in the fourth quarter and looked like a stud. And then you got the other true freshman, Devin. You got four guys that you can come out of the backfield. Sean Clifford had a little bit of happy feet at the beginning of that game at Kinnick Field, which is understandable. But he settled in and he played like a guy who's. And now you're going to get these guys to come back after a big win, come home in a whiteout, play a Michigan team that can't move the ball against one of the best defenses. I don't see Michigan scoring a lot of points, and I think we put up at least somewhere in the 20s.
Yeah.
I think we win. I think we cover. I think this is going to be a very fun night for Nittany Nation. I am extremely excited. I think that we continue to move, and now if we win this game, I'm going to hold my breath more about the game against Michigan State than I am about the game against Michigan, just because we're at Michigan State and we just can't seem to beat them. So, but this game against Michigan, I think it's going to be fun to watch from a Penn State perspective. I think it will be tight at first, but I really think that James Franklin, as much as he gets flack for not being like a great in-game coach, he's a great halftime game plan coach. He comes out with a great game plan for the second half consistently, and I think you're going to see a somewhat close game, maybe a field goal, maybe a touchdown at halftime, and then Penn State kind of takes off from there. I
am just waiting for Penn State to have trouble with the snap after
that. You know what? I'm probably saying.
You're probably going to be eating crow next week. Let's be real.
And you know what? And I will push to be on the show just to do that if it happens. But I'm really excited by especially our defense against their offense. Shea Patterson's throwing the ball over 2-3 times.
I don't give Michigan a shot in hell in this game. Michigan has shown that they like to shit the bed more than they like to play football. So at Penn State in a whiteout.
Nope. Yep. And Jim Harbaugh has never won as an underdog. He hasn't. There's a reason. There's a reason for it.
Yeah. I mean, again, I think Penn State's got this one locked away. All right. Why don't we move on? JJ, grab this social media read real fast. Let the people know how they can get in touch with us.
Yeah, real quick. You can find us. So obviously, if you found us, you found us somehow on social media or another. But you can find us on YouTube at From the Stands. You can find us on Twitter at From the Stands US. Twitter's a lot of fun to follow. We got guys updating that all the time on Saturday. Some hot takes, some clips and different things to watch.
A lot of trash talk.
You can jump in and fight for your team or just pile on, whatever you want to do. We got plenty to come and talk with us on different platforms. It's From the Stands. You can find us on pretty much any media. Still working on MySpace. We'll get there.
All right. Well, thank you, JJ. Let's go ahead and jump right into the 10:30 slot. For our shot here, we've got Air Force at Hawai'i, and this is a CBS game, late night, 11 p.m.
So nobody's going to be able to watch it, basically.
Yeah, pretty much nobody's.
I was going to say.
Nobody gets the CBS Sports Network. It's just a fact. No, like no.
CBS has a sports network.
Yeah, apparently.
It's like their
And nobody
alternative
gets to watch it.
channel. You know how
They
like
get like 1 or 2
ESPN has the
games a
alt
week.
channels?
And unless you have like the extreme sports package, which not even some packages don't even like offer it. Like I use Sling to watch all my games. I can get everything but the channel. It just nobody carries it because nobody wants to watch it. Even though I think this is gonna be a good game, it's just I hate that channel so much.
All right, well, let's go ahead and jump in for the last two to Dick. So, JJ, why don't you give me your rundown for this game?
This is going to be a really fun game. Hawaii has actually surprisingly emerged as potentially the top team in the West Division of the Mountain West Conference. And I kind of thought that was a possibility before the season started.
Yeah, you've been high on them all year.
Yeah, because part of the reason the West Division is not nearly as good as the Mountain Division. I mean, I think the top 3 teams are Boise State, Utah State, and Air Force. And maybe Air Force interchangeable with Hawaii, but Fresno State and San Diego State got the love because they're always there. But they both were expected to have down years this year, and Hawaii still has Colt McDonald. He's good. He's a very good quarterback. He's going to air it out, and I think Hawaii wins this game because it's Hawaii, and I think because if Hawaii does start to move the football, Air Force isn't going to be able to play from behind. They do throw the ball more than the other service categories, but they're still like 100, and they're still in the bottom of the country in throwing the football. So if they fall behind, which I think they will lose this game. I got Hawaii.
Dick, you got anything to add?
I mean, between this Mountain West matchup that we have here and then the Mountain West, and it should be Mountain West one we have coming up, this one is definitely going to be very competitive. I do think that I'm feeling a little bit more toward Hawaii right now. I could be still riding the high from them beating Stumblin earlier on in the season. But I don't know. I'm just going to have to see it. Given how late these games are, I haven't had a whole lot of opportunity to stock up on the tape, but the one game I did watch, which was admittedly against Arizona, I really liked what I saw from Hawaii.
Yeah, no, I agree. All right, then let's go ahead and jump into the chaser here. We've got Boise State at BYU. Now, I think this one's going to be a pretty solid one. It's an ESPN2 game, 10:15. So again, another late night game, but not quite as bad as the 11. So what do you guys got? Dick, why don't we start with you?
I think Boise is just going to bury BYU. I don't think it's going to be entirely close.
I like what I'm hearing.
The Broncos have been a little bit of a force this year. I'm going to be shocked if BYU plays them close. I mean, give me Boise and the points and more.
Yeah, no, I agree. JJ, you got anything?
Yeah, I think this is going to be close, actually. Mostly because I think BYU's defense is pretty solid. You got Hank Bachmeier, who was your starting quarterback. He's out. He's not playing for Boise State this week. So you got Chase Cord, who is a junior. He's never started a game before, so it's his first career start. I believe this game is at BYU. I believe, correct? Yeah. So it is at BYU. It's in Provo, so that's tough. I think it's an unknown thing. So this is a game that I personally like. I like to gamble. I wouldn't bet on this. Don't know what Chase Cord is. But BYU has played close in a lot of games. Even the Utah
the Vegas line, I think, is 7, isn't it?
It's like 7.5 at this point. And I think you look at BYU's games, they played a lot of games outside of the Washington game and outside of the poo-poo game against Utah, which even that game, you take out 2 pick sixes, it's actually a close game. Their defense kept them in that game for a while. I think it'll be a close game, but maybe Chase Cord is better than Hank Bachmeier. But I think this is going to be a close game, and we'll see what Boise State does with it.
Yeah, okay. I mean, I think even though it's at BYU, I'm going to probably lean a little bit towards Boise State. I think Boise State's offense is pretty explosive here.
I think they should still get the benefit of the doubt, like even without Bachmeier. But don't think we should just totally discredit BYU.
That's true. I mean, I think the BYU is a pretty solid team. I don't know. I like the way that Boise State's been playing lately, and so I kind of want to lean, even though we've got some players out. All right, so let's go ahead and move on to the next segment, which is another interesting one here. We've got Man versus Machine, featuring you, Freddie Airmail. The Reddit user Freddie Airmail has gone with some kind of computer algorithms here to try and figure out what the lines should be for these games, and there's some shockers in here. JJ, why don't you hit that first one? Oh, what you got?
Sorry, I was gonna say really quick. I'm blown away by the graphics department. You guys deserve pay raise.
Yes, they do.
Tremendous logo. Love every bit of it. The right, left part of the brain. It's just fantastic. Secondly, Freddie, been a contributing member of the show for a long time, been in the writer's room. He's our analytics guy. He's been asking us to do this. Loves his algorithm. I'm happy we can finally get it on, and let's get into it. JJ?
We'll see how it goes. JJ, go ahead and take the first one.
The first one is the Boise State BYU game. I just talked about it. I think the Vegas line is right because I think it's correctly factoring in that Hank Bachmeier isn't going to be playing. Not that this game won't be closer to Freddie's line. It's all going to be dependent upon how good is Chase Court actually. Yeah. And I don't think we know that yet. You can go off his against Hawai'i, but Hawaii is an offensive team, not a defensive. So I'm gonna say it's closer to the Vegas line just because of the uncertainty with Chase Court.
I don't think 22.5 points is what we're going to see BYU ultimately winning by, because that is, I mean, I don't know of a game outside of like A&M Lamar, just off the top of my head, that had that kind of stat line, or Texas State or something like that. But I do think that Boise is going to have a resounding win here. I don't know that they would cover 22.5, but I definitely think it's going to be at least 2 scores. 7 seems low to me. I really understand what you're saying about Bachmeier right now, but I just don't think this Boise State team can be stopped at this point, especially not by BYU. Has been incredibly hot or cold this season. I mean, I'm willing to, if I were to put money on the two, I'd feel more comfortable with Freddie's prediction at 22.5 than I would at Vegas at 7.
Okay.
Well, 22.5 covers the 7, so I mean, if we're betting the 7 at least. Huh? Yeah, I think I'm going to probably tend towards the Vegas line here, just because I do think that with the quarterback change, Boise's going to have to change some things, but I think that they've got enough momentum and their coaches really know what's going on with the team enough to fit him into that system pretty quickly. And he's obviously gotten some reps, so I don't know. I mean, I do think Boise State wins the game, and I think it's probably closer to the Vegas line. I might say 10. So next we've got Stanford UCLA,
which is actually going on right now.
Yeah, it is. Let's see if we can. Why don't we?
I got the
circle
score.
back. Oh, you got the score. What's the score right now?
Halftime.
So
he's got Stanford by 20.5. He's got Stanford by 20.5. This is UCLA up 21-10 at halftime. So he's a little more than a little off here. So he's off by like 30 points right now.
Yeah, that's a 30-point swing right there. Saying that Stanford's supposed to win by 20.
So I'm gonna say it was closer to the Vegas line.
Yeah. That's a real life test right there.
That's easy to say in hindsight, JJ.
Yeah, you're right.
I mean, I still probably wouldn't have said that this was going to be a blowout game. I'm actually surprised the UCLA is winning by 10.
Well, no, I'm not surprised. Stanford's starting a walk-on quarterback. I mean, that's tough. He's the third string walk-on quarterback. You're going to have some trouble on offense. I'm surprised UCLA has 21.
Yeah, well, that's more what I was trying to say. UCLA just hasn't. I don't know. Again, they've been hot and cold, so maybe this is their hot day.
Yeah, maybe.
Let's go ahead and jump into the next one. Oklahoma State, Baylor. He's got Baylor by 10.5.
Too much.
Vegas has Oklahoma State by 4. If I'm reading that.
That's what it is. So Baylor's a 4-point underdog. I think this is closer to the Vegas line, but I do think that the line should be shifted a little bit more towards Baylor. I think this should pretty much be a game. I think this should pretty much be, who wins. There's no line. There's just these teams are pretty evenly matched, but it is in Stillwater, so I can see why Vegas gave a little bit.
Yeah.
I would say it should probably be closer to like 1 point. So I'll give him a little bit there, but I think it's closer to Vegas.
Yeah.
I'm with you. I would prefer to see something closer to like 2.5, a one score line. Baylor just narrowly lost by a margin very close to that last week. I think it's going to be similar. I think Oklahoma State is going to be in the driver's seat the majority of the game. There might be some missed opportunities there. We're just going to have to see. But
10.5
I think
high.
Yeah, Vegas I would kind of err with on this one.
Well, do we want to see a prop bet on how many OTs we get?
I'd feel more comfortable with blown calls.
Yeah.
Ooh, all right, here we go. Let's go ahead and rock on to the next one. Kansas State, TCU. He's got Kansas State by 9.5. Vegas has TCU by 3.5.
I actually think he's actually not too far off. I think Kansas State should be the favorite. Maybe not by 9.5, but I think they maybe should be the 3.5 point favorite here. I think Kansas State's defense is very, very good, at least by Big 12 standards, and I don't think TCU's defense is a normal Gary Patterson defense. So I think Kansas State is the favorite.
Okay.
I'm right there with you on this one. I can't think of a reason as to why TCU is being favored here off the top of my head.
Kansas State's actually at home. So I don't know why at all.
Yeah.
TCU just hasn't impressed me. I mean, very much at all this season. I mean,
yeah.
And as good as SMU has looked, I mean, I'm always going to be partial to Power 5 versus G5. I mean, it's just I don't know what's been up with Gary Patterson. Well, I know it was up with him last year, injuries, but I really don't know he seems like these teams have been in a slump lately.
Yeah.
So
they're not the same teams, and Kansas State's the home team here. I definitely think I would lean more towards the machine line here. I think it should be Kansas State by 3.5 to 5 points. Probably is where I would.
I could see it by a touchdown.
Yeah, even that. So I like as the home team.
Yeah. All right, and let's jump into our last one here. We've got this one. I think is probably one of the more controversial ones. We've got Georgia State Army. Computers taking Georgia State by 8.5. Vegas has Army by 6.5.
So I faded the computer on the first three, but I'm going to agree on the last two. Actually, I think Georgia State should be the favorite here at home. I know Army is, they're a very good team, but they're going on the road. Georgia State's better than most people expected, and they're kind of growing from that Atlanta area, which everyone thought eventually they could do. I think this should be closer to a pick'em, just like the Oklahoma State Baylor game. I will say it's probably somewhere in between. I'm not even going to say it. I side with the computer or Vegas. I think it's pretty much right in between is where I would actually put
it. I do think Army got a little exposed last week,
especially on defense.
Yeah, I mean and really disappointing. We all love to root for Army, but Georgia Southern, they've had more than a few knockout punches this season. I think Army's a team where it's hard for them to play from a large deficit consistently. And I think that's something that we might see this game. There might be a few more passing touchdowns than they're able to keep up with. So as much as I think Army might try to play them close, I just don't see that being entirely the case here.
Well, you guys shocked me. I thought we would maybe see a little bit more Army hype here, but no, we're going Georgia State pretty much all the way. Maybe that one's a computer line.
I mean, we all love Army, but I got to think that a good part of that line has to do with preseason hype versus what we've seen at least the last couple of weeks.
Yep. Yeah, for sure.
I mean, all you have to do is get them to throw the ball and.
Yeah. You're right. All right. Well, that wraps it up here for man versus machine. I guess we've pretty much hit all the shots and chasers, so we'll just go ahead and throw up that viewer's guide real fast. Here's what we got. Obviously, just to recap, we've got the Florida-South Carolina game and the Iowa State-Texas Tech. You know what? Screw that. Why don't you guys tell me which ones you want to watch? JJ, what's your obvious?
Gee,
Well,
I don't know.
think
I don't know which game I'm gonna watch, guys.
Yeah, I think we all
I'm
know.
not sure. No, I'm watching the Penn State game. If I have to watch any game, I'm gonna watch that. From an unbiased perspective, which obviously I don't have, I would probably watch the Temple SMU game because again, that's gonna be a game that helps decide who goes to the conference championship game there in a conference that I think could actually argue to be the fifth best conference in the country, maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe even challenge 12 a little bit. But yeah.
For
Dick, what
me,
you
I'm
got?
gonna have to go with our first two shots. I've really enjoyed seeing Florida play more than I thought I would,
Mhm.
and I have to watch the South Carolina game to know if they're real because I don't want Jimbo to break that excellent streak we have going against the Gamecocks right now. So I need to do that just for my own sanity and personal safety. And then after that, SMU. A lot of SMU alums at my job. I know I'm going to be watching it whether I want to or not. But it is really exciting to see a good collegiate team in my hometown. So just give me SMU all day.
Yeah, I like that. I think I've got to pick one. I'm probably watching that Florida, South Carolina, just because, again, I want to see if South Carolina can do it again. You know, it's kind of the gift that keeps on giving. Can South Carolina upset another big team? But, you know, that may also be a little bit of SEC bias in me. And if I've got to pick another one, I do like that SMU Temple game, but
Yeah.
I feel like I'm just kind of riding off the high of picking Temple to beat Memphis last week. So maybe I'll watch that.
Nice little
Green Bay
subtle.
fight those Tigers.
I will say that does open up an interesting philosophical debate, though. At what point does an upset become a predicted victory?
Yeah, that's true.
You know, if
But I
they
think
upset
ultimately,
every team on their schedule.
yeah, it's no longer really an
typically
upset.
Temple typically gets less. I mean, this is coming from a Penn State fan as well. Temple typically gets less respect than they should, especially since Matt Rule was the coach. Like that, since then going, they always do better than people expect. And
Well,
I think
and here's my thing. It's at SMU, which I think is why Temple will probably lose it. So
yeah, but again, I think Temple covers and makes it a good game.
yeah, I think so too. All right, well, I think that covers it for these shots and chasers. We've got our games of the week. Now let's go ahead and see what's going to be the big storylines on Sunday, boys. What are we? Is there anything that we're learning this week, or is it just kind of one of those humdrum weeks?
I think, yeah, I was gonna say there. I don't want to say don't. Oh, sorry.
No, if you're, I got one. If you're
Go, JJ. What you got?
You go ahead.
It's gonna be the Jim Harbaugh hot seat question mark type articles, which I know I don't believe that. I don't think Michigan should move on from Jim Harbaugh. But every time Michigan loses, which I'm predicting that they're losing, you see 20 of those every Sunday, every Monday. You see 20 Jim Harbaugh hot seat question mark.
I gotta wonder when's it gonna stick.
It's not going to. Like from a Michigan's perspective, I know that there are people that will be that are upset by the way the season has gone. But
it's,
if you fire who's supposed to be the Michigan guy, who else are you gonna get? Like at this point, like who else are you actually going to get at this point? I think you got to stick with him and trust him, and you're gonna have to trust him for a while longer. But still,
well, and he's shifting his team too. We've got to give him
We've
that
talked
benefit.
about that. We've talked about that before, and I'm saying that, but that'll still be the Sunday headline because I don't see a lot of much else happening. There are a lot of highly ranked teams going on the road, but outside of Florida, I don't see a team that really poses much of a threat as being threatened when they go on the road. So I see Michigan, getting beaten handily, and I see after a loss. Every single time Michigan loses, it's the Jim Harbaugh hot seat question mark. Those type of articles will come out. Not saying that I agree with it, but that will be the headline.
Oh, I got you.
I was trying to say this earlier in a way that I don't think can be totally outrageous, but don't quote me on this. We might start to see some more of Dabo maybe not being the nicest guy in the world. We did have that incident last week where he just blew up at a kicker who missed a chip shot. I mean,
Yeah.
and we had the whole
After
incident.
being up 24. I mean, that
Yeah,
one.
Yeah.
we talked
I think
about,
that was a
we
pretty
talked about
questionable
this
thing.
before we went on. Yeah,
Yeah.
he little questionable there.
And we had that issue with Kelly Bryant, and it was a really polarizing thing that he did. Kelly Bryant not getting a championship ring last year, which on the one hand, I understand, he had already announced his intent to transfer, but at the same time, I mean, that's not really something we would have thought Dabo doing. I mean, I feel like if Saban said it, everyone would have thought he's a Bill Belichick kind of guy. You have to
we didn't expect it from Dabo. Not to say that maybe Kelly Bryant didn't want it, but you might not see Clemson beat Texas A&M if Kelly Bryant doesn't play. So
right.
Well, I was going to say, I think given what's happening in the polls, and I know coaches say they don't pay attention to it, but I gotta feel like Dabo feels, we have to be dominant. We can't miss any opportunities, or we're going to keep dropping. Because if God forbid,
score big time this week.
Exactly, and we're going to get some pundits and some opinions saying that Clemson shouldn't really be doing that, but I don't know.
I think that Clemson has to. I mean, that's the only way Clemson can solidify their spot, in my opinion. Like, if they're not doing what they have to get that spot, because they don't have the strength schedule. When you don't have the strength schedule, you've got to make every win a giant win. Yep. And so, I don't know, you got to keep that killer mentality. And I think that's what Dabo is probably trying to instill, is kind of that, we're in the run for the CFP. Yes, I know we're beating them by 24 and it's a nobody, but we got to treat every game like it's the CFP. But still, man, kickers, you can't get in a kicker's head like that. Half that game, more than half that game, probably 75% of that kicking is mental. So you can't expect, like, if he's going to miss a chip shot, you don't rip him a new one for it. You talk to him.
Not in that game either.
Right. Well, and not in that way too. Like, if you're going to rip him a new one, do it in the locker room. Maybe he didn't warm up. Maybe he didn't, do something that he normally does.
Don't do it on national TV.
Anyway, Sunday storyline.
A little bit of Dabo. Gotcha. All right. Well, I think that wraps it up here for all of us from the stands. Guys, I appreciate you guys taking the time, listening here and talking to us. And I hope to see you again next week.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Sure. Hopefully I'm happy next week.
Yeah. Hopefully JJ's rocking the white. I'll see you guys later.
Y'all have a nice night.
Yeah. Good night, guys.